Thank you. The title is The Potted History of a Public Speaker. Good evening, Mr. President, Madam Chair, and fellow members of the Association of Speakers Clubs. I was handed this book a few months ago, even before I paid my membership at the Speakers Club, by Jeremy at the Cardiff Speakers Club, because I think he had faith in me. And one day I went to a pub where all the best ideas happen, I'm sure you'll agree. And I brought the book along and had a conversation with my husband about what assignments I might do. And we had this interesting conversation together. And as it happens, it's a restaurant as well as a pub, like most such establishments in the UK. I wrote a plan for my first speech on a serviette, which is very fortuitous because tonight you're going to get a little bit of a ramble through the potted history of a public speaker. I've no idea how long it could be because I am in my 50s, and when you get to this age, your history is longer than most. But let's give it a go, and I'll stop when a certain light turns red. When was my first sound? Well, I'm of that age and generation where I think being held upside down by the feet and being given a smack on the bum was how you were tested for life. So I imagine my first sound was a scream. Now, I can't tell you what my first words were as a child, and I wish I could, but being the third of three girls meant that my parents were probably quite bored of having children and girls, and I was born when my eldest sister was under 4, so I'm sure they were far too exhausted to listen to me. But I do know that I went to Catholic convent school for primary and secondary school, so I learned the flip side of speaking very early on, which was to be quiet, to listen, and to pay attention. Really important ways of learning, I'm sure you'd agree. And in that time, I realized that I really liked having attention. And being the youngest of 3 girls, I really had to compete for attention. And so I used my voice, my speech, and my words to get that attention, because I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the strongest, and I was never going to be the oldest. In fact, the first phrase I can remember that was used to bully me was to be told on numerous occasions that I'd swallowed a dictionary. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I was quite proud of that accusation, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't know what it's like in England or Wales or Scotland in relation to this, but in Ireland, if one of your parents comes from one side of the country and another parent comes from another, the parent that moves to the other location doesn't really like the local accent. And so when we were in primary school, we were sent for elocution lessons to learn to speak properly, to say butter instead of butter. And I don't remember anything about those elocution lessons, but I think I enjoyed it because poetry was somehow part of that. But what I do remember in terms of becoming a public speaker is that I learned very early on to be audience. We have a very high standard of amateur dramatic theatre in Ireland, and I was taken to 4 productions a year, 2 in Clonmel, my hometown, and 2 in Carrick-on-Suir, 13 miles away. And we would watch musicals, and I just loved I even loved when the instruments were playing all weird, funny little notes to tune up, because the excitement built and the chatter, and then the lights would go down and the curtains would rise, and I would enter this whole new world that was far from Clonmel in Ireland, and it was so entertaining. And I think that's where I got my love for engagement. The other place that this happened was in my home, because I grew up as an Irish publican's daughter. And downstairs was the pub, almost an extension of our home. And I learned to sit in the bar and speak to old men and listen to their stories and tell them my stories. At school, I was known as a chatterbox and told to be quiet. But with these lovely old men, I could talk and talk and talk and listen and listen and listen, and there was all the time in the world. Unfortunately, we didn't do drama at school, but when I was 15, I got to be a founder member of the Gable School Theatre in Clonmel, which was a great place to escape and discover the world of improvisation, speeches, learning lines, and putting on plays. But the best I could get at school up to that point was public speaking exams. I don't know, I imagine you've got them here. I know Trinity College London and I think RADA do them. And they're a fascinating and brilliant way to develop public speaking skills. And I'm really excited to know that actually at the Association of Speakers Clubs, according to Martin, even at the age of